Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we're looking into the disappearance of James Otis Anderson, missing since June 13th, 1982, age 54. 5'9", 190 pounds. Last seen June 13th, 1982, Townsend, Montana. Gray or partially gray hair, receding hairline, brown eyes. And there's part of a newspaper article that I could access. And it says a search of Anderson's church residence turned up no sign of foul play or any indication he had planned to leave town for an extended time. His Sunday sermon was on his desk, his plugged-in electric razor on the sink beside his toothbrush. The last reported sighting of Anderson was about 8 a.m. that Sunday when a couple of Townsend residents said they spotted him driving east on Highway 12 toward White Sulphur Springs. He reportedly was alone, Flynn said. Authorities monitored his credit cards and bank and Social Security accounts, but noticed no activity. The case went quiet until 4 months later when, on October 26, 1982, a deer hunter happened upon Anderson's abandoned 1975 silver Volkswagen in the heavily timbered White Gulch area of Big Belt Mountains, about 25 northeast of Townsend. The car obviously had been hidden, parked in a spot where it was visible neither from the air nor from any road or trail. Getting it there would have required a skillful drive along a ridge and then down a steep slope. Flynn said whoever drove it there probably was familiar with the area. Dozens of searchers, assisted by dogs, scoured the terrain, finding several of Anderson's belongings a half-mile from the car at a vantage on the ridge that offered a striking panoramic view of Townsend, Canyon Ferry Lake, and the surrounding landscape. Found where Anderson's prayer book, cap, Old Testament, glasses, and clerical collar, Flynn said. Anderson's body wouldn't necessarily have been found if it's in the area, Flynn said. It's a pretty big country. It doesn't take much to get a long ways from there, he said. Anderson was under a lot of pressure at the time, Flynn said. Proceedings were underway to fire him from his position in the church, and he was going through a divorce and child custody fight, the county attorney recalled. Many tips came in over the years, including claims of murder and alleged sightings, but nothing of real substance, Flynn said. Authorities found no links with the similarly puzzling disappearance of a Catholic priest in northwest Montana 2 years later. Anderson and the missing priest John Kerrigan were friends, having worked in White Sulphur Springs during the same period earlier in their careers. Kay Anderson remembers that her husband had acted peculiarly in the months before his disappearance. He had been preoccupied, distant, and he wasn't communicating, which contributed to the decision to separate, she said. She and their children had passed him on a street in Townsend the day before his vanishing. The kids waved and said hi, but he ignored them, which was uncharacteristic, she said, and noting that he adored his children. Lewis, part owner of Townsend Lumber, recalled a similar story, saying Anderson passed within 20 yards of him outside the post office that same day without acknowledging him, which was unusual. I don't know what to think, Lewis said. He was a good guy. He was a kind guy, Lewis said. He'd do anything in the world for you. The Sunday morning sighting of Anderson driving out of town wasn't particularly unusual because he was an early riser and a horticultural nut who often would venture into the country to pick wild flowers to adorn the church altar, his ex-wife said. Her theory is that he was kidnapped. I would think that maybe somebody else was in the car with him and they ducked down or had a gun or something. Her theory is that he was kidnapped and killed by members of one of the cult-type groups that were squatting up some of the gulches around town at the time. Her husband had been adamant about running them out of the area, she remembered. Another possibility is that he was abducted by a drifter, she said, remembering that transients occasionally knocked on their door looking for handouts when she was living in the church residence with him. She doubts that he took his life or ran away because he wouldn't do that kind of do that to his kids. She also doubts that he was the one who maneuvered his car to the spot where it was found. He was a terrible driver, she said. On the other hand, Pat Anderson said a couple of other mysteries have prompted her to keep open all possible scenarios. Among his personal effects never recovered from his car at home was his pistol, address book, and an afghan that she knows meant a lot to him, she said. She doesn't know where those items are. Also, something strange happened on holidays and first several years after his disappearance. She had a couple in another town who were the Andersons' close friends receive phone calls in which the caller was silent. It hasn't happened in recent years. It was just eerie, she said, acknowledging that it could have been a cruel prank. She also noted that in December 1981, when she and her husband were near separation, he dropped her as a beneficiary of his life insurance policy in favor of St. John's Church. The church collected on it 7 years later when she declared him legally dead, she said. Pat Anderson knows she may never figure out what happened to her husband on that Sunday 12 years ago. If God wants me to know, someday we'll have an answer. So, and it kind of reminds me of in Montana, there was some guys that had mental disabilities that went to a game, and they found their vehicle driven on a really rough road that was hard to drive. And then in Montana, there was also a man who went missing not long before this in the list that I have, whose vehicle was driven down a road that was hardly ever traveled, and it was nosed right up to a bunch of rocks, and his keys were thrown about 15 or well his keys were found about 15 yards away, as if somebody had thrown them or dropped them in a crevice, and he was never found. So, and this is James Otis Anderson on the Charlie Project, and you can pause this and read it. I would expect it would be the same information. So, and you can pause that and read it if you like. And then we have the Doe Network. So, don't forget to pray for his family and his loved ones. Feel free to leave comments, and have a blessed day. Bye-bye.